Hi, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're talking about a Dresden plate block. This is a traditional block used in quilting, and we're going to be discussing a little bit about its origin, the tools you'll use, and I'm going to give you a couple of pointers about how to make the blades. We're doing this because the first project of 2024 is going to be a Dresden plate quilt block in a modern way. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Hi, thanks for joining us. Now, today we're talking about Dresden plate quilt blocks. That's a lot to say, isn't it? So we're just going to call it a Dresden plate. This is a traditional design going back, some say as late as the 1800s, but it seems like the common acknowledgement of this is from the 1920s with the first publication of a pattern in the 1930s. And it is a fairly simple type of pattern, and when it comes together, it really makes a really showy design. So I want to just show you one of the ones that I have done. This is a Dresden plate. It's kind of in muted, soft colors, blues, tans, beige. This is a beige background with the tan and the blue. And this is a quilt that is probably 10 years old, I'd say. And it is done with it's either a cotton blend batting or it's a polyester batting. I'm not sure which. I think it has some polyester in it, though. It kind of feels like it when you rub it. It's got a little more of a lofty texture than the more firm all cotton that I'm using now. But this particular pattern is a series of blades that are put together with a circle in the center. And the circle in the center covers up all the raw edges of the blades, and sometimes you'll see this circle really tiny, and sometimes you'll see it in the more modern adaptations with a huge circle. Now, the bigger the plate gets, the bigger the circle gets, obviously, but the size of that center circle is totally up to you and what kind of design and what feeling of the pattern you're trying to get across. And this one, I wanted it bigger. The block here, I wanted that bigger so I could make a bigger impact. So that's why it has all the borders around it and the coordinating colors. Okay, let's put this aside and talk a little bit about how this is made. First of all, I want to tell you how I got to this point. I was trying to figure out a project for 2024 to start it off. And I was going down one path and ran into some problems, so I had to kind of stop and think about what we've covered, what we've done, what we haven't done. And the Dresden plate does provide an opportunity to learn some new skills, which I am all about. Even in the Dresden plates that I've used, I've only used the little pointed blades. So in this one we're going to switch that up just a little bit, and we're going to combine the traditional pattern with some more modern fabrics and really take it up a step. But if you're going to make a Dresden plate, you need some kind of template. Now, I found these probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, I would guess, to make this. I was looking on here to see if I could see a date. But this is a template package from Marty Mitchell. And actually the name of her company is From Marty Mitchell. And I'll put a link down below. As far as I know, they are still selling this. I did see something when I did a search on the internet the other night. And in this pattern, she gives a little instructional sheet, and she shows you instructions of how to use these templates for all different size Dresden plates. So if you were to purchase this or something like it, typically you're not stuck with this size. You could go bigger, you could go smaller, and you could even, if you wanted to do a giant Dresden plate, I think if you kind of studied a little bit, you probably could figure out how to do that as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about her package. She includes in her package some acrylic templates, and you get one of this template. This one is really dirty for some reason. This is a flat top template, and it has little spots, little holes in it, and you lay this down and you cut it with a rotary cutter, and then the markings and the holes are used as sewing locations for different size plates. So for example, if you were doing, let's see, if you were doing the smallest Dresden, you cut a 7-inch strip of fabric, and then you lay you lay this line right here on the top of that, and then you cut. And then, I'm sorry, it's not a 7-inch strip. That's a 7-inch plate. So you cut the strip, whatever that is, that's what? 3 inches? You have a 3-inch strip, and you're going to put the top of it here and the bottom of it here, and there's her markings. And then she gives you stitch spots here as well. Then she gives you 3 templates for the round top plate blades. There's 3 different sizes: the larger, the medium, and the small. And also on these, she gives you, and she did on the first one too, she gives you a marking on the template that shows you how to place your fabric on the grain, or place your template on the grain of the fabric. You can also use that as the design of the fabric. I was cutting some the other day with stripes, and I used that line to make sure that the stripes didn't get wonky in the pieces. So that was very helpful. These templates do include your seam allowance. However, in this paper instruction sheet, she gives you the patterns for the circles in the middle. Those do not include seam allowances, so make sure you don't get caught up in that. She also includes in here a couple of other things that you might want to investigate at some point. She's showing you how to make a fan, a Dresden fan, and that's just simply using fewer blades and placing them in the corner of your square. And she shows you how to make the side profile of a butterfly, and she gives you the little templates here. She also shows you how to do the, what does she call them? Orange peels. She gives you template for different size orange peels depending on the circle that you're using. So there's a vast amount of information in this little packet. And when I bought it, it was $20. We'll have to see what it is currently selling for. That came from a quilt shop. So it's possible it could be a little less expensive from another provider. Okay, so let's just take out the 2 we're going to be using today. Get ahead of myself trying to put everything away. I had to clean up the sewing room last night, so I'm kind of conscious about cleaning up my mess today. We'll just try to keep it all in one place. And I'm going to move this. All right, so when you're cutting these, this is going to make your pointed blades. This is going to make your rounded blades. And the first thing we have to do is cut them. And I thought I had a little piece that was showing us how to cut. we can do that. All right, here we go. From this fabric, I have placed the rounded blade on the fabric. Like that. And I'm paying attention to how that pattern is falling with that line that's coming down in the middle so that my fabric doesn't get offline. And then we're going to use, excuse me, whoops. Oh, I don't know if this one is going to work or not, but we'll see. We're going to use a erasable or a disappearing ink pen, and we're going to trace around the pattern piece, and then we're going to put little dots in the holes. Those are going to be your marks to sew. And from there, let me grab a pair of scissors. Then we'll just cut this out. Now the next piece, you're going to flip your fabric around and put the next piece on. Or you could flip the template around. So when you are cutting, and you can use your rotary cutter with this. I usually use the rotary cutter to cut the straight lines and then use a pair of scissors for the curved lines. And this is a curved piece, so we're just going to cut it right there on the line. So we have that for the curved piece. I don't trim down here unless it's excessive. And then for the flat top piece, we're just going to cut a piece like this. So you can see here, here's the template. And you can see that because this is the medium size that we're using, the piece of fabric doesn't cover the whole thing. Okay, now so how do we sew it? Well, this one's easy. This little flat top, we're just going to put a pin here in the end of it. Oh, and you have, let me do this first. I did not mark these. We will mark those. Close that up so it doesn't dry out. Now you've got two little marks on each side. And you just fold the top in half, making sure that you get the edges matched up. And then you're going to sew what is essentially a 1/4 inch seam. Actually, it's a little bit more. But I wanted mine to stick out a little bit more, so I went with that 1/4 inch seam. And my thread is caught in my machine. There we go. Okay, so we're going to clip the extra thread off. So now we've got a seam right across the edge. And then we're going to take our pin out. And what we're going to do is we're going to clip on that folded edge. And we're going to clip a little bit on the cut edge. And then I like to trim it up about halfway. So now we've got about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then, I wish I could find my, oh, there they are. These are great little turners. I'm going to use my scissors as a little turning. And I'm going to poke them right in there at the top. Be careful, you don't want to poke through the fabric. But you want to make sure that that turns really well. And then I don't have my iron on, but I can show you just by kind of pinning it in place that now you have a point. This and this edge are finished. These are all raw. But this is a blade with a point. That's the way you make that one. Now, for the round ones, it does take a little extra step. So on the round ones, she tells you to cut a strip 1.5 inches wide of a coordinating fabric that's going to blend in. Either blend into your background, blend into the fabrics that you're using for the blades, whatever. My fabrics for this are all going to be whites and blacks with designs. So I picked a piece of light gray. It probably could have been a little bit lighter, but with the black fabrics, this one did well. So you're going to take your rounded pieces, find a pen. Now you've already got them rounded and you've got the little dots put in from the template. And you're going to pin these so that the piece of fabric, the 1.5 inch strip of fabric, covers the top of it. What you're going to do is you're going to line the top of that rounded blade. So then once you have these pinned in place, you can cut them apart. You could sew them individually. No, you could sew them all together on the strip. I didn't find that that worked very well for me. But we're going to do this. We're going to take, because we're using a 1/4 inch foot with the metal guide for the edge of the fabric, I'm going to trim these all up so that the lining, the gray fabric is cut at the same place as the fabric we're using for the Dresden plate. Okay, so you see that's the fabric for the plate on the back side. This is the front of the fabric, right side, and here we've got our piece that's cut the same. It's 1.25 inches. It's probably 1.25 by now, but the blue dots are in this facing. And then what we're going to do is take this to the machine and we're going to stitch from blue dot to blue dot along the curved line. I like to do this with a really small stitch. I was doing it at 1.8 when I was working on these before. And I like to go really slow. I'm going to put my needle down right in that blue dot. And I'm going to have it pointed more towards me like this. Not like this, but like this. So that the back of the fabric is almost straight out this way. So I put my needle in that blue dot. And I'm using black thread for this. You could use black, white, gray. I'm using black because most of the fabrics what I'm working with are black. And then I'm going to start. And I've turned my machine all the way to its slowest speed. And I'm going to take about 2 stitches and then I'm going to back it up 1. And it does 2, even if I do 1. And then I'm going to go forward 2 stitches and 3. And then I'm going to lift my presser foot up and turn it just slightly. We're going to be doing a lot of that in these. And we're going to do 2 stitches. And then we're going to turn it slightly. And we're going to do 2 stitches. We're going to turn it slightly and do 2 or 3 stitches. We'll do 3 this time. And we'll turn it and do 2. I need to get this pin out of here. I'm going to turn it and do 2 and turn it. Maybe do 3 and turn it and do 2. We'll do 3 and turn it. And 3 and 2. Sometimes you tell it 2 and it does 1 more. We'll do 2 and 2. Okay, and then we're going to, when we finish up, we want to be coming back down and we're going to take a couple of stitches to lock it in and cut. So then you've got this, where you've sewn this little arch around. Now, I would recommend that you be very careful and do this very slowly so that you can ensure that you get an arc that doesn't have any points in it and it is evenly spaced on the fabric. The other thing that you could do if you purchase this set of templates is to use the smaller piece, and we may even try one of those. And then your marker We may try one of those right now, actually. If we have one, here we go. And we're going to place one of these pieces here so that not that the dots are matched up, but the outside edge of the template allows you to draw that around. And I'm going to try that because, you know, sometimes these ideas come to me when I'm showing you. They fail to make their appearance when I'm doing it for myself. Okay, and now we're just going to stitch. I think we're still going to have to stitch slowly, and we're still going to have to lift and twist, because if we try to force it, it's going to stretch that fabric and we're not going to get a smooth circle. Now, in doing this, what I'll tell you is that line that we drew is more than 1/4 of an inch, but I am using that line as a guide so that I know at least my stitches are even. An even distance away from the line I drew and an even distance away from the edge of the fabric. That actually did great. I wish I had thought about that the other day. And now we're back to that other dot and we're going to back it up. Okay, that was a great improvement. That is even smoother and more evenly presented than the others. So the next step is clipping the corners, because if you try to clip this and turn it inside, you're causing all those pieces inside to not do this. You want them to pull together. And the only way to get that to work is to come in here. You can clip to your seam, but I find the best way is to cut out a notch. And I'm going to do that about every 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I want to get as close as I can to that stitching, but I don't want to cut through that stitching, because if I cut through it, it's going to ravel out, and it's also not going to give me a nice smooth curve. And this may be a little more than 1/4 of an inch. I want to clip all the way to where we started. So now you've got this little flower effect. We're going to go back and we're going to trim back those little notches about halfway. So now we've got about 1/8 of an inch sticking out. And we want to give a little trim right on the edge where we started and stopped sewing as well. So now you've got that, and we're going to turn it. And I usually like to turn it. I found that I could use the little template inside to start that process, and it would kind of show me where I needed a little bit of help, and then some non-pointy smooth object that you could run along that seam. And that gives you a nice finished circle. I think you can see that pretty well. I would recommend pressing it, maybe even giving it a little bit of starch. But there are your two blades, your rounded blade and your pointed blade. We're going to use both in our new project. The one I showed you earlier, we only used the pointed ones because they're faster and they're easier. This one is a little more time consuming, but it can be done. Okay, we talked about the history of the Dresden plate. We talked a little bit about this packet of templates and what you got in it, why they were good. My only concern about the packet is perhaps you don't want to spend that much. And like I said, I don't know what they're currently running, and if you ordered it online, if it might be less money. She does show you in here some variations of the pattern. I think we talked a little bit about that earlier, and we will be doing one of the variations for our project. I think there's also a way in here that you can use the little patterns that she gives you in the paper to make a heart as well. Because I know that there are some of the Dresdens that have heart shapes in the middle as opposed to a circle. Lots of variations. So I'm going to show you this with the front of it one more time so you can see what it looks like if you do choose to order it. And I think even if you don't have it, if you still wanted to sew along, you could use whatever resources you had with that. But that's the packet. It's from Marty Mitchell. They're very nice templates if you do decide to get them. And a Dresden plate is something that you may, over your course of making quilts, that it might be something you want to make more than once, because you can make so many variations and so many different color combinations. I have 2 already, so this one we're making is going to be my 3rd Dresden plate. They're both a little different. One is this lap size that usually I just use to hang on the wall, although you could use it as a lap quilt. And the one we're going to do, right now I'm just planning on it to be something fairly small, but it could easily be something bigger. When I bought the supplies for it, I did buy 2 packets of fabric just in case I did want to make it bigger. And the other fabrics I have for them would be readily available if I needed more. Okay, I think that's going to do it for today on Dresden plates. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will do my best to address those. And we will get started on our new project, and I'll tell you all about it next week here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe. If there's any project you've seen or you'd like to know a little bit more about Dresden plates, I do have a show and tell video that I put out a few months ago that you could go into the playlist under show and tell or do a search for Dresden plate, and you could see how I use the Dresden plate templates for that one as well. We'll see you next time here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Have a great week.